I used to think marriage lived on autopilot. Groceries, jokes about the neighbor's lawn flamingos, date nights scheduled between work deadlines and laundry cycles. We were not unhappy. We were organized. Nate stacked the dishwasher like a puzzle champion. I ran point on calendars and birthday gifts. Our life fit in a color-coded app, tidy as a drawer of folded shirts. Somewhere between my 30th and 32nd birthdays, restlessness slipped in like a draft you don't notice until your coffee cools faster than it should. Friends posted about new cities, new hobbies, new phases. A podcast I listened to on my commute did a glossy episode about ethical non-monogamy, complete with careful language and softly lit success stories. I told myself I wasn't bored, I was evolving. I told myself honest exploration couldn't be betrayal if I announced it like an adult. I rehearsed the speech while stirring marinara, practicing a tone that sounded enlightened, not cruel. I love you, Nate. I'm not leaving. I'm just expanding. The words felt sophisticated in my mouth, like a borrowed blazer. He worked late that night, a spreadsheet's green glow on his face when he walked in, tired and soft around the eyes. I set a plate in front of him, wiped my hands on a dish towel, and stepped into the conversation I'd built a ladder for. I've been thinking about us, I began, aiming for warm, not threatening. He smiled. That sounds serious. It's intentional, I said. I want to try something different. Not ending us, never that. More like adding. I will be seeing another man for a while. I heard myself spelling each word. We will still make love, but I will also do it with some other guys. Honestly, transparently. I'll tell you everything. Silence didn't fall. It landed. The spoon in his hand hovered over an untouched bite of pasta. His eyes searched my face the way you look for a seam in wallpaper, hoping there's a place to peel back and find a wall you recognize. You're serious, he said, not a question. I am, I answered, starting to stack defensive words like sandbags. It's not about you. I want novelty, freedom. We'd set rules, boundaries. It could actually make us stronger. He placed the spoon down with the care you give a fragile object in a museum. No shouting, no slammed chair, no list of my faults. He nodded slowly, the kind of nod that doesn't mean agreement, just comprehension. Thank you for telling me, he said. I appreciate the honesty. Relief flickered. I reached across the table for his hand. He didn't pull away, but he didn't squeeze back either. We'll talk more tomorrow, he added, standing to rinse his dish. Long day. I'm wiped. He kissed my forehead, light as steam, and went upstairs. I slept badly, buoyed by flimsy satisfaction that I had been brave. In the morning, he'd already left for work when I rolled over. His side of the bed was flat and cool. On the nightstand sat a sticky note in his careful block letters. Breakfast in the fridge, have a good day. A smiley face, small and neat. I took that as a sign we'd be okay. At lunch, I met a friend who had been my loudest cheerleader for trying modern love. She ordered a second lavender lemonade and told me I was ahead of the curve. We used words like agency and autonomy as if they were charms that could ward off consequences. I repeated my speech in a more confident voice, and she clinked her glass to mine like we'd just signed a deal. I stayed late at the office, chasing a deadline, answering messages, basking in my own narrative about honesty as virtue. I pictured Nate at home with a book, possibly Googling articles with headlines like, "Can monogamy evolve?" We would be enlightened spouses with color-coded calendars and a fresh chapter. It all sounded so tidy. Dusk turned to night while I sat in traffic. The radio murmured humid summer songs, and my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Drinks tonight? It was a coworker I'd chatted with at a conference. Someone who'd flirted in a harmless, distant way that felt like less than a pebble. The timing made me laugh. Universe, you are not subtle. I didn't respond. The front door stuck the way it always did when the weather turned. I leaned a shoulder into it and stepped into a quiet house. Not unusual, I told myself. Just early enough that he might have gone for a run. But the silence had a hollow to it, the kind of quiet that belongs to places that have been emptied politely. I flicked on the entry light. The console table looked naked. The bowl where he kept his keys was missing. The picture of us at Cannon Beach, windy day, hair everywhere, was gone, leaving a brighter rectangle on the wall. "Nate?" I called. Habit. Hope. Nothing answered back. I dropped my tote by the stairs and walked into the kitchen. Counters. Wiped. The little jar of coins we emptied pockets into. Gone. The to-do chalkboard above the coffee maker had been erased, clean slate gleaming like a dare. The fridge hummed, full of air and light. A single container sat on the middle shelf. Eggs, hard-boiled, 2 missing. Breakfast in the fridge. He'd meant it literally, nothing poetic about it. The living room wasn't wrecked. It had been curated into absence. His favorite throw was folded and gone. The stack of woodworking magazines he swore he'd get through someday vanished. The plant he saved from the office when everyone worked remote. Rescued fern, stubborn and green. No longer drooped on the side table. The coaster ring it had left remained, a pale halo on the wood. My chest tightened. I jogged up the stairs. Bedroom, closet doors open like a gasp. His side, stripped to hangers. Shoe rack, half empty. The space where his watchbox had lived looked like a pulled tooth. On the dresser sat an envelope with my name, not sealed, not dramatic. Inside, a single page. No speech, no lecture. Just lines in that steady handwriting. "You want expansion. I prefer closure. The accounts are legally mine as of this morning. Joint funds divided per our prenup. See attached receipts. I canceled the utilities in my name, effective next week. The lease transfers to you alone. Keys enclosed. My exit isn't punishment. It's a boundary. Please don't contact me. I wish you well in the life you chose." Attached, he'd stapled a neat list. Bank confirmations. A copy of the prenup clause I had dubbed paperwork paranoia when we signed it. And a screenshot of the money movement. My portion, his larger portion, all perfectly in line with the document I hadn't read since our wedding week, because love doesn't need footnotes, right? I stumbled into the office. The filing cabinet drawer was open, and the folder labeled Household was lighter. He had taken what belonged to him, left what belonged to me, and nothing beyond that. I checked the safe, heart in my throat, not because of cash, we didn't keep that, because of things you can't replace. My grandmother's locket sat exactly where it always had. He hadn't touched it. He wouldn't. The bank app lit my face blue-white. Balances, my personal account intact, the joint at 0 with a transfer note matching his printed screenshot. His accounts no longer visible. Clean, surgical, legal. I went room to room, as if searching would conjure him from the air. Bathroom, spare razor gone. Laundry. The detergent I teased him for buying in bulk moved to the top shelf like a faint joke left behind. Garage. His tools missing with geometric precision. My bike still there. The cat circled my ankles, meowed once, and sat beside the door as if to say, "Well?" I sat on the floor with my back to the bench where we put shoes. The wood pressed into my spine. The house hummed its neutral hum. There was no anger to push against, no thrown words to replay and pick apart. Just a quiet I had asked for without understanding its weight. My friend called. "How's the great experiment?" "Hypothesis rejected," I said, and my voice sounded like someone else's. "He's gone." "Gone like cooled off at his brother's?" "Gone like vanished," I said. "House curated. Money moved exactly as the contract allowed. He left the keys to everything that's mine and took everything that's his. He left a note that isn't even unkind." Silence on her end, then a thin, stunned wow. I laughed, a short breath that wasn't joy. I wanted freedom. He gave it to me. That night, the bed felt like an airport runway. Wide, lit in strips, empty planes that never landed. I lay in a rectangle of cold and stared at the ceiling fan, counting rotations like pennants. I tried to be furious, to call it abandonment, cruelty, a trick. Instead, scenes flashed in honest light. Me at the table with my brave speech, him laying a spoon down like it might break, the sticky note with a smiley face. A man who does not argue when the terms change, who simply opts out. I got up at 2 and made tea I didn't drink. I sat at the kitchen island and read his note again. My exit isn't punishment, it's a boundary. The sentence sat there, simple as a brick. In the morning, emails arrived like birds on a wire. Utility confirmations, lease transfer instructions. A polite message from our credit union with a subject line that read, "Account changes completed." Practicalities moved forward because practicalities don't pause for emotions. Work felt absurd. I answered emails about banner color and Q3 goals while the life I knew had been archived. At lunch, I opened a blank document and tried to write what had happened in words that didn't make me sound like the villain of my own story. The document stayed mostly empty. By evening, the house sounded different. Houses do after. Every step had an echo where a life used to absorb the noise. I made pasta because it requires so little courage. I ate standing up because chairs looked like promises I couldn't keep. Before bed, I walked to the door and set his keys on the console table he'd left me. The metal clinked like punctuation. I had wanted a modern love I could shape like clay and still keep the vase we already had. He had given me fire instead, clean, quick, leaving behind a silhouette of what stood there yesterday. The next day, I stood at the window and watched the mail carrier shove a thick envelope through the slot. Legal size, my name, our attorney's letterhead. Notice of separation, no contact requested. No anger in the text, no spite, just a map. The exit he'd already taken, the roads I could follow if I wanted to leave the place where my brave theory died. I folded the letter, placed it next to his note on the console, and finally let the truth I'd been outrunning touch down. I had told a man who loved me that his exclusivity was outdated. He'd replied in fluent boundary, and he was gone. That's how part 1 ends, not with a slammed door, but with a silence that has edges. Tomorrow, I would learn what living inside those edges felt like. Tonight I stood in a tidy room, listening to an honest hum, and realized freedom feels different when it isn't someone else footing the bill. I didn't cry that first morning. I made coffee, poured it into his mug by muscle memory, stared at the steam, and finally poured it down the sink. Then I opened the laptop to prove to myself this was just a scare I could reverse with a phone call and a long talk. Reality logged in before I did. The joint account showed a 0.0 balance with a line item exactly matching the prenup split he'd stapled to the letter. My personal account was fine. The credit cards tied to the joint were closed. Our shared cloud drive pinged with a tidy notification. Folder ownership transferred. His name removed from anything mine removed from anything his. It wasn't spite, it was surgery. I dialed him anyway. Straight to voicemail. I tried again, then texted, "We need to talk. Please, I'll come to your office." The bubbles never appeared. I called his sister. She answered. On the second ring, already braced. "He's okay," she said. "He asked me not to be a go-between. I love you, but I'm going to honor that." "It was just a conversation," I said, hating how small the word sounded. "A modern one." She was gentle and immovable. "You changed the contract. He chose not to renew. That's not modern. It's boundaries." Before I could argue, she added, "He told me to tell you the cat is microchipped in your name and he'll pay for 6 months of food. There's a box on the porch." I opened the door and there it was, a flat of cans, a bag of kibble, a vet receipt. Practical kindness, which hurt more than anger. At lunch, I met the same friend who'd applauded my speech. "He's overreacting," she declared. "He'll cool off. Men don't actually leave. They posture." "He took the fern," I said, and heard how ridiculous it sounded, even as the words left my mouth. "So he's tidy. You're still married. He has to come back and negotiate. That's what happens." "Prenup," I said, sliding her a photo of the clause. Her confident expression folded at the edges. He read it, I didn't. Work offered no refuge. I tried to build a deck for a campaign, wrote copy about fresh starts and deleted every line. My manager asked if I was okay. I lied. At 5, I closed the laptop on sentences that didn't believe me. The house felt larger at night. I put on music, turned it down, turned it up, turned it off. I kept forgetting he wasn't in the next room, and then remembering twice as hard. I took the note from the console and read it again until the paper went soft. I wanted it to be cruel. It wasn't. I wanted a villain. I got a boundary. The next morning, a certified letter slid through the slot. Notice of separation, no contact request. A list of assets already divided, and a suggestion, in his tidy hand at the bottom, to contact a lawyer so I could feel less lost. "It helps," he'd added, as if recommending a chiropractor. I made an appointment with a lawyer named Delgado because action felt like oxygen. She read everything in silence, flipped back to the prenup and gave me the kind of look doctors give when you say you've been living on energy drinks. He stayed inside the lines, she said. No malice, just precision. So I can make him talk to me? I asked, hearing the teenager in my voice. You can ask a court to order communication if there are shared obligations, she said. But you don't have any. The lease is now yours. Utilities his canceled with notice. Accounts divided correctly. Honestly, he did you a favor. Clean exits are rare. I don't want an exit, I said, and felt the truth of it hit like cold water. I wanted both. She closed the file. You wanted him to adjust to a reality you designed. He declined. That's not betrayal. That's agency. Agency. The word came back like a boomerang with my own fingerprints on it. Days became a checklist. I transferred the internet to my card, rescheduled the pest control guy, put the garbage day in my phone as if I were new here. I lifted the mattress to rotate it the way he used to and nearly crushed my wrist. I changed a light bulb over the stairs and realized why he hated that ladder. Small tasks revealed the invisible labor of a man who never made a spreadsheet about it. At night, my phone lit up with messages I didn't answer from numbers I shouldn't have entertained. The coworker from the conference, a gym acquaintance who had always flirted on the friendly edge. Their texts sounded like opportunity last week. Now they sounded like noise. I muted everything and ate cereal for dinner over the sink. I tried on anger the way you try on a coat someone else recommends. It didn't fit. I tried on shame. It fit too well. I tried on honesty and finally stopped fidgeting. I had presented open like a gift basket of enlightened terms and assumed the man across from me would unwrap it with gratitude. He had declined politely and left the room. A week later, his last. Footprints disappeared from the home admin. Streaming services logged him out with a cheerful "Welcome new user." The smell of his aftershave finally faded from the bathroom. The cat stopped waiting at the door after work hours. My heart didn't. I boxed the things that were unmistakably his and labeled them with a kindness I hoped he'd feel without needing to see. Shop towels, router bits, winter gloves, brown. I stacked the boxes in the hall and stared at them until the sun moved across the floor. There was no address to ship them to, no forwarding info, just the quiet shape of what used to be ours. 2 Saturdays later, I found the courage to tell my parents. I expected lectures. I got a pause. My mother said I liked him because he was steady. My father said nothing for a long time, and then softly, "Steady isn't boring." I swallowed the dozen seminar words I'd been using to defend my choice. They tasted like cardboard. On Monday, the landlord emailed to confirm the lease transfer. The addendum had his digital signature, time-stamped 6:08 a.m., the morning after my announcement. He had woken before the sun, made breakfast, filed a change that would protect us both, and walked away. A small deposit hit my account, his half of the security deposit, sent with a subject line that read simply, "Square." No note, no barbs, just math. That night, I dreamed of our first apartment, the one with mice and a view of a brick wall and a couch too big for the door. We ate takeout on the floor and promised each other everything. I woke up with my hand on the cool half of the bed and realized I had asked him to renegotiate those promises alone. I took a long walk, past the bakery where he always asked for the ugly croissant, past the hardware store where the clerk knew his name, past couples arguing gently over paint chips. I stopped at the river and watched the water do what it always does, move forward, carrying what it must, leaving the rest. On the 3rd week, I wrote him a letter I didn't send. I didn't apologize for the idea. I apologized for the arrogance. I told him the house sounded different without him and that the plant he rescued wilted when I overwatered it. And I finally understood the difference between attention and care. I folded the letter and put it with the boxes labeled shop towels. When Delgado called with an update, nothing legal pending, separation acknowledged, no obligations left to negotiate, I asked a question I didn't know I had. If he never responds, what happens next? "You live your life," she said. "He's already living his." That night, I took the console table photo down and hung the beach print back up by itself. Wind, waves, no figures. It looked less like a loss and more like a horizon. I didn't become a saint overnight. I still drafted texts I didn't send, still refreshed email like it might deliver him back, still replayed that dinner and wished I had used any words but those. But the house slowly learned my footsteps. The cat claimed his lap-shaped spot on my legs instead. I cooked for one and stopped setting a second plate out by habit. On a Sunday, the doorbell rang. An older delivery driver handed me a small padded envelope with no return address. Inside were the missing hex keys from his tool roll, a soft cloth that smelled faintly like his workbench, and a sticky note. For the chair squeak. No reply needed. I tightened the chair and sat in it for a long time. The revenge I thought I'd sparked turned out to be no fireworks at all. Just a map drawn in firm lines, and a man who refused to walk outside them. Spring arrived like forgiveness, slowly, without announcement. I stopped counting the days since he'd left and started noticing smaller things. The sound of rain on the roof, how sunlight moved across the kitchen floor, the quiet hum of a house that no longer felt haunted. I took a weekend job at a local design studio, something small but grounding. Work filled the spaces where regret used to echo. I didn't talk about Nate much. When people asked, I said we'd gone in different directions and left it at that. One afternoon I drove to the coast, the same beach from our old photo. The air was cold, the kind that clears your head whether you want it to or not. I sat on the sand, knees pulled to my chest, and let the wind sting tears I didn't fight anymore. They weren't the kind of tears that begged for a do-over. They were the kind that said, I finally understand. I realized his leaving wasn't cruelty, it was consequence. He'd given me exactly what I asked for. Freedom, just not in the shape I expected. I'd mistaken security for stagnation, commitment for confinement, and when I pushed the boundaries, he simply stepped outside them. That night I wrote him one last letter, not to send, but to say goodbye in my own words. You were never the villain. I was the fool who thought love could survive carelessness. Wherever you are, I hope you're happy. I finally am too. I folded it, tucked it in my journal, and let the waves carry away what little resentment I had left. When I drove home, the sky was streaked with pink and gold, the kind of ending that doesn't feel tragic, just inevitable. The house no longer felt empty. It felt honest. Freedom, I learned, isn't about having choices. It's about understanding the cost of them and living with it.